professional editor, and I've always wanted to expand my horizons by talking to other editors and sound designers, music composers, visual effects supervisors, essentially all the magicians who silently and invisibly work behind the scenes. This series is an attempt to make the invisible artists visible. I hope you enjoy the conversations.
I also wanted to know from all of you, how does one identify a good edit, a good edit, or a good editor? Without seeing rushes, guys, without seeing rushes, how do we know who's a good editor or a good edit? What is a good edit?
One who keeps his speech short, I guess.
I feel like it's again comes down to the same thing. Now, good edit is like it's anyways like a subjective term, like in a larger sense. What is a good edit? Like somebody who has saved the film from what it was to what it is. That is a good edit also, but only if you know the material. If you don't know the material, then at the very superficial level, you are going at that basic thing is ki if the thing is what you are seeing is engaging you, and the choices that the editor has made is engaging you, and like you feel like somebody would have cut it in some very basic editor would have cut it like in a certain manner, and the idea of holding a certain shot, why the certain shot has been held on for a little bit longer, that itself creates a difference. That's what Hemanti ma'am was saying also, like how each of us would cut a scene will be very different, and like that itself, like it's not about good edit, does that suit the narrative of that film? That is where the good edit, for me at least when I'm watching the film, that's where it sort of kicks in, like something that I feel like, oh wow, that's a beautiful like constructed film, or like everything is on point. So there is a thought that has gone into everything.
Also when you're collaborating with people, not necessarily editors, right? If that the understanding that if I remove X scene, what happens, what are the implications, the rest of the film, and what needs to be tweaked for me to enable that, I think also makes for a good editor. He or she doesn't necessarily have to sit at the machine to be a good editor.
Right. This is actually something I'd asked Shrikar sir as well. And largely because it's a pet peeve of mine when you're reading a review, and a lot of the length of the film is attributed to the editor. And whether it's a good, and then people are grading edits, like giving 1 star to the edit or 1 out of 5 to the edit. My question really is that how do you know what the editors put in, what kind of work has been put in?
First thing is stop reading these stupid reviews.
Yeah, that's the only
because most
solution.
of these guys don't know shit. So rather not think about like all this, because like even studios, like when they respond to shows and all, what do they write? Make it crisper. Like what is this KFC ka chicken or what?
I've actually had
like
someone...
that's the basic outline. All the studios replying on shows and everything. Yeah, make it crisper. Make it crisper. Like, don't know what the hell is crisper in terms of just make it crisper.
No, and also a lot of times, as you said, the narrative doesn't dictate a crisper or a tighter route of editing. So everything, and I think that's one of the reasons why we find this montage-like editing, what is called montage-like editing across the board. Everything looks similar. That individual identity of the editor, I feel, also gets erased because everyone's cutting in the same way because everything's dictated by studio feedback. Manas, you were saying something.
I've actually had a review of a film of mine where the reviewer wrote a more authoritative editor would have, done a better job in the film. I was like, what? Did you have like access to CCTV footage or what? In the editor. I was like, इतना पर्सनल कोई कैसे हो सकता है कि एडिटर के साथ यार, मतलब अपने रिव्यू में. So that, I mean, good point that you mentioned that there is a sort of genericness in the edits, especially of the stuff that is now coming on the OTT to the edits, and I feel honestly it's not coming more so because of the editor per se or even the studio. It's the time that is being given to edit a particular project. And if we are churning out like शूट खत्म होने के 1 हफ्ते में अगर आपको रिलीज करना है, तो फिर वो एक ही तरह से कटेगा और फिर शायद सुपरवाइजिंग एडिटर ने सिर्फ इतना ही किया होगा, यार साउंड ठीक है ना, कहीं पे जर्क तो नहीं है, कहीं ब्लैक फ्रेम तो नहीं है, मतलब एट बेस्ट आप वही कर सकते हो, आई फील. Sorry, Shweta, go ahead.
No. I want to add to what you're saying also. What the disturbing trend right now is that, when studios, OTTs, platforms are dictating how your edit has to be paced. At an X minute, something needs to happen. At Y minute, this has to turn of events have to happen so that the viewers engage. Now, how you can't base your edit, on such stuff? It needs to do justice to the entire narrative. तो ये अभी शुरू हुआ. दिस इज अ लिटिल डिस्टर्बिंग नाउ.
वो तो मतलब नेक्स्ट लेवल, अब तो ये लोग नेक्स्ट लेवल चले गए ना. वो डिक्टेशन राइटिंग से ही चालू हो गया कि मतलब बाय द 15th पेज यू शुड हैव अचीव्ड दिस इन योर एपिसोड. एंड सो देन ऑब्वियसली फिर उसका ट्रांसलेशन जब एडिट पे आता है, दैट अ लॉट ऑफ टाइम्स नाउ वन इज गेटिंग इनटू अ प्रोजेक्ट, बट व्हाट वी आर रीडिंग वी आर नॉट बीइंग कन्विंस्ड बाय, एंड डायरेक्टर खुद ही बोल रहा है कि यार मैं ये बनाना चाह रहा हूँ, पर अभी दिस इज व्हाट इट इज, सो हाउ बेस्ट वी कैन यूटिलाइज दिस. अगर आपकी एंट्री ही कॉम्प्रोमाइज से हो रही है तो फिर तो क्या ही बनेगा ना.
This is based on some AI thing, no? That people click away in so and so minute if they are not engaged. So that everything is based on that.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Namrata, I wanted to know how you feel and how you cope with these kind of notes, the feedback notes, because those are a beast unto themselves.
I mean, to go back to your previous question, I was thinking, what is a good edit? I think for me, the rhythm of edit is the most important thing. And because with rhythm, you create characters and you create world. And if an editor is able to create a consistent rhythm through the film and stay true to it, I find it very enjoyable and I really enjoy those edits. And so I think that for me is a good edit, which is totally consistent and every character gets their space in the sun. And notes, I mean, I don't know. I feel you can't take them on face value so much. I also get these crispy notes all the time. Crispy and choppy. Choppy edit needs to be crispened. So, I mean, because choppiness also comes from writing sometimes. You have too many tracks. You have so many characters in a scene that you feel like, before I could invest in one, the other one has come up. So I don't take it very seriously. Sometimes you try and understand what are they really trying to say, which is also the case in a lot of feedback sessions. I feel people say things they don't literally mean them.
Yeah.
You have to interpret it and find out what do they actually mean. But then if you get really tired and you're on NC3 and they still want you to crispen it, then you crispen it. And then you're like, khatam karo.
One of the things that I've been seeing a lot is, we end up with cuts which are, say, 2.5 or 2 hour 45-minute long cuts. And those have to be cut down abruptly to, say, 2 hours, which is then you're told that's the ideal length for a film now as per Omax or whatever else it may be. But that again is a problem in terms of maintaining a rhythm when you have to cut out 45 minutes of a film. So how have you faced a situation, any of you, where the first cut has been really long?
Yeah.
And how are you kind of cutting that down to whatever that desired length may be?
You have to cut it out through the writing. In the sense, you have to cut out chunks. You can't just trim and make it 45 minutes smaller,
Sure.
By trimming, you can get 5 minutes. You can just shave off and just keep chiseling.
Yeah.
You have to go back to the writing.
I've been very early on in my career, I was told to cut down a film by taking off one frame at the head and tail of every
waiting
shot.
for that joke. Yeah. Every 24 frames, remove a frame.
Yes.
I have literally done that, not for a feature film, but for this sitcom I used to edit in the days when there were weekly shows on TV, okay? So there's this wonderful director, Manjul Sinha, And so the sitcom, literally, he would shoot like mad. I mean, he knew, and it was that broadcast master. So it had to be like 22 and a half minutes. You could get 10 seconds aage, more or less. You could not exceed that because it had to go on TV and they only had that much time slot, And we would be so desperate. I have literally sat and done that with Umesh Gupta. We have sat and cut one frame from each cut, and Manjul used to have so many cuts. Used to shoot like in this frenetic way. And we actually managed to reduce, like, you need 30 seconds less. There you go, 30 seconds less. But yeah, you're absolutely right, Namrata, that you can cut seconds and minutes. You can't cut 45 minutes like that.
Like Jabin talked about Takya Kalam, when somebody tells me to do that, I was like, fit to fill kar dete hain. आ जाएगा लेंथ में सब हो जाएगा सब कुछ.
When we speak to filmmakers or when we speak to anyone who's working in the film industry, most people are appreciative of what editors do, and they always say that editing is very crucial and very critical to the process. A lot of people say we love editing, we love sitting in edits, etc. This has not necessarily translated to better monies for the editors. This is a pretty much appreciation that is at a verbal level, but we don't really necessarily see this translate into better budgets that are being offered to us. What do you think? Where are we? Like, are we going wrong somewhere? What is the problem here?
I personally feel shows have done this more. You end up working a lot more physically, emotionally, and you get paid very less. It's the model. Like I just don't get it.
Yeah.
I'm working for 2 years on a show because of the pandemic. But I mean, what am I getting? I'm really doing it out of good faith and goodness of my heart.
Especially show editing में तो मुझे really समझ में नहीं आता कि pay disparity क्यों है between writers and editors. I'm really finding it difficult to sort of.
But writers are also getting paid less, bro. Don't worry.
No. By their standards, na. But unke.
Yeah, no. I mean, like the comparison always, I feel like a larger comparison is cinematographers in terms of what they get paid and everything. It's like editors, like he constantly, like you are almost slashing by half, uska bhi half, and you are like looking at that.
DOPs का तो फिर भी मैं देख रहा हूँ आजकल producers ने crack कर लिया, वो young DOP hire कर लेते हैं, तो फिर वो हमारे बराबर का हो जाता है.
उससे भी ज़्यादा assistants. If your own assistant is on a monthly. So because it takes so long to finish a project, your assistant earns more than you.
Yeah. Yes, she does. Absolutely. और वही तो कितनी बार तो मतलब tranches are till release also. तो मतलब बिकी नहीं 2 साल तक release नहीं वहाँ तक.
Yeah, the tranches तो are leave it like that. IMF delivery and all that is stupid.
But also I think going to the root of this problem, there is no standardization of any kind of remuneration. There is nothing, and it has
exactly
to that. It all boils down to that. I mean, remember we went to the association and we saw what the rates were, and I don't know what the rates are sitting at. It's like some 20 years purana rate. So something has to be done, and we've been talking, and it's just that, the unfortunate thing is that it can't happen with a bunch of us. It can't happen with just what you call the top editors or the editors, actively working editors. It has to be everyone. This is
actually, Hemantidi and Jabin, if you can give a little perspective on this as well, because you guys have been around for way longer than any of us, and I'd like to know, the problem is clearly systemic. I want to know, how was it when you have started off as assistants and then turned to independent editing? Has it always been a situation where the editors paid at this amount, like almost the least paid?
Yeah, I think it's the least paid. I mean, I hardly get paid half the time, but it's always been like this. In fact, now people pay me more, but so it's, I don't know. I mean, Jabin will know if anything has been different.
I mean, I think that Hemanti, our generation, I mean, we can call ourselves the older generation. We didn't fight hard enough. Maybe we didn't fight at all. So actually, I'm very encouraged by the fact that now people are willing to fight a little. And yeah, I'm also getting paid more now than I did in the past. And this is because other people have upped it, you know like there is, of course, there's no standardization, there's no standard rate, but there is a kind of baseline, and that baseline I feel has finally gone up. One reason being that younger people have fought for it. And younger people, even in the sense, like when you have an assistant who insists on getting X amount per month, then I find it easier to fight for my assistant than for myself. So, then I'm like, okay, if my assistant is going to get X per month, then surely I should be getting X plus X per month. So you kind of work it out in your own head, like, oh shit, yeah. And then you realize that, okay, so other editors actually, when they ask, they are given. If you don't ask, you're not. If you're willing to take, so it's just been like many light bulbs for me over the years.
No, and I feel it's a lot with do the like especially editing thing, at least whatever I have seen in terms of it's a lot to do with the psyche of like these producers who had a set mindset. What like happened like when I was working on a film called Razi or something, or like these other films also, like there was a conversation which I would have with the producer, and you'll get to like you'll realize they are like comparing you. Like they are like first thing is they're gonna say ki, oh usko to hum log ne itna mein diya kind of a thing. What like how come you ask? So that comparison level, that when you actually manage to break it, now that's mentally they have to get used to ki, oh editor does need to get, which I feel like a lot has changed like massively like in last 3-4 years. Like at least like with associates now nobody cringes like oh 70 80 90 you have to pay certain money for the associate that person needs, because he's the first frontman for an editor or like the person. And like that feeling, I feel like it's the psyche that needs to be changed, and that can only, as Shweta said, it can only come when everyone just goes through that process. But again, I know it's not for everyone. It becomes a difficult battle also sometimes. It's like it's not an easy way out kind of a thing. If I was like at the beginning of my career, I want to do independent work, I'll figure my life out and I have to just get on to something, I will, which happens across the world, I'm sure. It's not like just purely with India, because we don't have the problem is this union which is there now. It's a complicated union which is just like a different, like they have different like ideas in terms of like if they were just film union now, film editor, it would have helped a lot. It because the clubbing of these two things now, that just changes the whole term, because that's a different world which we don't interact with also. There's a TV world which we are not even close to, which we don't interact to. We don't like the standardization of working. So we are a very different like that way. So then what happens? They are doing a standardized thing for everyone. So which can't be matched up. Like eventually you won't have you won't have the similar wavelength anyways. Like you can have a conversation, but it will come down to the similar thing. It's will spiral down into the basics, and it will come down to be nahi wo to sabke liye karna hoga. हमको ये सोच के.
And I have to add here that talking to Nitin has been a great motivator.
Yes, I must say.
He always pushes me to ask for more money, and I'm really grateful for that.
Yes. I'm calling you, Nitin, next
group
time.
में एक मारवाड़ी तो चाहिए ना ग्रुप में.
Everyone to.
हाँ, उसने करे, go for it.
नहीं, ग्रुप में एक मारवाड़ी तो चाहिए ना, who can push all of us. उसी को तो आता है. But
I got a call yesterday only saying that they want a edit है मैडम, ये आएगा अभी जनवरी में शूट है, दिसंबर में, जनवरी में एडिट. अच्छा ओके. एक महीने में तो एक बहुत स्टार कास्ट है ही नहीं, बहुत आई कांट मेंशन द एक्टर, बट रिसेंटली लाइक स्टार कास्ट, ऐसे कि नहीं स्टार नहीं है, बस 2 घंटे की फिल्म है. तो ऐसे
2 घंटे में हो जाएगी.
आपको कैसे पता 2 घंटे की फिल्म है? आपने एडिट कर लिया है. ये 2 घंटे की फिल्म है, तो उसके हिसाब से 4 लाख ऐसे. ओके गुड.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a lot of people call and they say बहुत simple film है. And the thing is, simple films are the most difficult to edit. How does one explain that? And how do you know simple है? And
No,
because
also,
of that, I
but I
have
feel
to
like
charge lesser.
but you have to give them benefit of doubt. They're also trying to sell something. Matlab, everyone has to do their own job kind of a thing. So you also have to listen very sweetly and respond very sweetly.
Yeah.
Oh, बहुत easy job है, हाँ, कोई बात नहीं. कितना एक महीने का, you should also put a timeline then. You should say कि 20 दिन में हो जाएगा ना, तो बस ठीक है, 20 दिन contract. वही because घुमा के, I had this similar conversation when people would say कि हाँ बहुत simple film है, like initial stages of career, everyone keeps saying कि like I have like cut a film which is like got peanuts and that film has gone for 1.5 years kind of a thing, and you are like wondering कि क्या है मतलब. And then one day I've just gone to do something else. The director has got pissed कि how did Nitin leave like the edit or this one. Well, obviously it's not that dramatic, but like कि I know कि अरे कैसे यार आज मैं edit कर रहा हूँ, अरे तुम edit कर रहे हो मतलब when will you get free from your different things, 5 other projects that you are doing and everything, and I'll wait for you kind of a thing. So that is something that I figured कि you will have to have this conversation. Like I've also sort of figured कि it's very hard when you just devote yourself to one project now. It's very hard. Like I've realized one thing in the industry, like at least like in the last 2-3 years, is it for me it becomes very difficult कि because you take up one of these big films. Okay. Like everyone says कि हाँ ये तो 7 महीने में we have this release. Film abhi suddenly actor has got pushed, film has gone 4 months ahead. Ab you have devoted, if you have devoted yourself with not doing anything else, thinking this is the only film that you need to do, then you are actually making peanuts in terms of the length of the project that it's going to get finished in. So then it suddenly starts feeling like stupid. Yeah, what is like, that's why I feel like that modulation that happens, because I don't enjoy working on a couple of projects at the same point of time, or neither does anyone. But the thing is that seems like the only feasible way to work around these things. Otherwise, it's like it's painful. Otherwise, like everyone's timeline just goes crazy and people don't respect कि अगर time के ऊपर चला गया, they don't come back unless you ask for it. They don't come and say कि no, it's gone beyond 7 months and everything. Please, you should crack another. मतलब we should talk about monies that you will charge for like next 5 months or whatever. They will never have this conversation, which is very like, which is why there's no standardized and there's no process and everything. So it always feels like it's सामने से कोई बोल दिया तो हाँ ओके कितना ले हुए मतलब it's like almost like oh let's lock on some basic amount kind of a thing for the next 5 months. So which I feel is a very complicated sort of scenario.
This is actually similar to Manas, the conversation that we keep having in our WhatsApp group.
Yes.
I think there's 2 factors. One is that putting an out date in your contract. So whatever monies you're working for is, you're making it worth your while. The second thing, this exclusive, the clause of exclusivity, negotiating that such that you're not only dedicated to one project, because as Nitin said, that I feel that's the only way out as well.
I was saying that editors and sound designers generally are non-confrontational people when it comes to these things. When it comes to the edit, they love to confront, but when it comes to these things, so जो ज्यादा दबता है लोग उसी को ज्यादा दबाते हैं ना लाइफ में.
अरे yes, that is non-confrontation is because I remember talking to one of the editors who's like a very like a proper like she's edited like a couple of features and I don't want to name her, but like I was telling her, why are you charging so less? Like charge more. Like you can't be charging less and everything. Like you were coming to a bigger production house, like this, like you can't be charging more kind of a thing. Matlab charging less kind of a thing. And then like they feel like oh no, should we like ask? Like it's this constant fear which
Hemant Didi, are you listening? Hemant Didi, are you listening? I was going to say
we should call out Hemant Didi on this.
No, I haven't spoken to Hemant. I was talking about someone else. But like I'm saying, these are proper. Like she's also like someone who's like in the like someone I really admire her work and everything. And I was like, please ask for money. Because that is like never makes sense. Why you would like be afraid to ask for money, which you actually deserve.
I to find it. I think that it also stems from how they are budgeting for edit of a project. No, एक तो without
budget कुछ नहीं. I have got like you will be surprised.
I'm saying that they budget with a preconceived set notion of कि इतने में edit हो जाना चाहिए. Or with irrespective of the scale and the volume and कौन direct कर रहा है. Some directors shoot with a lot of material. 5 कैमरा 3 कैमरा या constant rolling कुछ. या किसी का होता है लॉन्गर पीरियड होता है. डायरेक्टर्स बहुत शुरू में ही सेट कर देते हैं यार मेरे को कोई बोलता है 7-8 महीने चाहिए, कोई बोलता है मेरे को 3 महीने में हो जाएगा. सो एक बहुत ही रैंडम बेसिस पे बजटिंग हो जाती है, वेयर टुडे मतलब हम तो बात कर रहे हैं एडिटर की फीस की, बट मतलब गेटिंग एन एक्स्ट्रा मशीन आल्सो बिकम्स सच अ ह्यूज exercise in the production house. Having that conversation कि वो हम चाहे एक्स्ट्रा टीम मेंबर चाहिए आपको, चाहे आपको एक्स्ट्रा मशीन चाहिए, मतलब बिना मशीन के तो नहीं हो जाएगा ना एडिट, मतलब
अरे मशीन छोड़ो, आई एम गेटिंग वन डायरेक्ट प्रोड्यूसर, वेरी फेमस प्रोड्यूसर सिटिंग saying that आप 6 बजे के बाद काम नहीं करो, हमें ओवर टाइम देना पड़ेगा.
हाँ.
आप रात को काम मत करो. And I said, when do I finish? And I take my time. No problem.
But then the salary doesn't justify that amount of time that it takes, ना.
हाँ, तो हम लोग और प्रोजेक्ट करेंगे, कोई टेंशन नहीं है.
Yeah.
No stressing over these things.
Do you do you guys think that we should be shifting to a payment model that talks of time rather than finishing a certain amount of work?
My contracts time based.
Because that's what I mean in other countries, editors charge per week.
Per week. Exactly.
So then it doesn't matter however long your project takes. And when you charge like that, if they can break up your payment into weeks, then if you say that, okay, you hired me for, say, 50 weeks. Now I'm going to take 3 weeks off to do some other work. They know that they don't have to pay you for that time because that time you're getting paid somewhere else. So it I don't know whether it even eases that pressure on people.
I don't mind getting paid for both the projects.
The problem is that this will be a very difficult thing to crack in terms of like a very time, because Indian mentality is stemmed from like doing package deals. There is like never about it's like a classic Indian psyche ki okay package mein karo kitna kya hota hai kind of a thing, and that's where like from the top only it works. Like if the director and the producer and everyone sort of so you can sort of try it, but the problem is that unless the DOP is saying the same, editor is saying the same, sound designer is saying the same, tab saath mein ho to suddenly editors only saying ki no, we are going to work like only time. I feel like then it becomes like a complicated, like how do we work it out time wise? Humko kaise pata hai kitna shoot karenge? Tum bata do. Because what they will do is they will have this conversation saying ki theek hai, as long as you can finish in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, that is your up to. If you are not able to finish in 3 weeks, then you'll have to carry it on kind of a thing. Because I've had a lot of conversation where they are saying ki 2 mahine lagenge kind of a thing, and I'm like 2 mahine mein nahi hota edit. It will take 4 months or whatever. So it's like कि 4 months के लिए calculate करके बात करो kind of उस हिसाब से, because they will say कि हाँ 2 month में होगा, आगे आप देख लेना, अगर लगेगा तो आप कुछ अपना ले, because it's always हवा में बात होती है ना, कि वो हवा में कुछ छोड़ दो, उसके बाद में जो भी गिरेगा तो वो तो एडिटर ही वाइप करे. मतलब it's like कि you're just gonna be the last person who will be like, okay, chalo. As Namrata was saying, like the show with you, like to sort of working on, like अब कहाँ वो 1.5 साल पहले से चल रहा है, तो you're like sort of working through. Obviously, nobody will say, because you share a relationship with everyone in team and everyone, and it's not like you don't like the project, but it's just the time frame. You have to respect someone else also and come forward and say ki you guys, it has gone beyond the time frame. It has gone, like, which nobody will ever come and talk, like, and as soon as you will go and say कि यार अब तो budget ही नहीं है, मुश्किल हो गया project, because pandemic के कारण it has gone so ahead now, it is never gonna be. So then what do you make the conversation? You are like also like, let me finish it and get off kind of.
But I'd make full drama, yeah. Nitin, I to fully go drama. No, I have to pay bills, I have this, fees, ye, wo, nahi hai paise and all. I'm full drama queen. And
yeah, but that's what, if you can manage to crack it, then it's amazing. But like we have both gone through similar process, so that's why like something we like. So that's why we know ki what the full process of thing. I personally feel what only collective thing that we should like is there, if there's anything that should come out, which I know there was an attempt also, is like just this film editors thing. Now, if there's something that is just a collective separate film editors thing, I feel like that's the only thing that could be a starting point for something. Like just like diverting ourselves, like whether it's film editors from South also and this also mixed or whatever, but like at least just film editors to start off with. Because this clubbing thing is definitely not working, and we'll just keep roaming around in circles. With like we sort of had that process where we tried and everything, and because eventually you can't make everyone excited about these things.
That's
there is
true. I
like
mean, one of the issues with that when we were also trying is that at the end of it, there were just 6, 7 of us who were still trying to
I
make
know.
things work.
Yeah, and the thing is, because the AC or any American cinema editors or anything that works, because they have a good amount of money that people put in to work for the community also. So people who's running the community is also getting a good salary out of it. So who's like working hard in terms of like, so then they organize community activities, community awards, community thing. So that becomes like a refined sort of a thing where you have a respectable front face to something.
Yeah, but like at least for to start things off, at least amongst us and other actively working editors on
Yeah.
commercial projects, we need to be on the same page as to suppose
Yeah.
if Nitin's got a call and then say then
Yeah.
Jabin gets a call. I mean, it's nice to know what rates at least internally we know we are going to work at.
True.
That
I
really-
completely agree. Because most of the time we are charging so less, it's like it's rather to have a conversation. And I have done that a lot of times. I've always called up like if films which have come for re-edit, I've called up the main editor. I've asked, what is this? What's happening? Is this like conversation?
Yeah.
Even if they don't like, they are not someone who like to talk about money or something, but at least like bounce it off them, have that conversation. Because I feel like that's the only open way. He's like, if Manas and me worked on a film together or something, and like, Manas, how much do you want and how much? So then we collectively charge a certain amount. It's as simple as that. Okay, this much is working. If we get this much, then only we are working. Otherwise, leave it.
Yeah, I think with multiple editors, definitely. I mean, we've done this between Manas, me, and Parikshit on a project where we have done a sort of collective bargaining and making sure everyone's therefore getting paid the same amount of money. I think that was a very good and successful attempt.
Or what if
Yeah.
we do footage wise? Like, I don't know whether it's at all feasible as to how much footage there is.
I have started talking about it. Like something I've been making conversation is how many cameras you are shooting on and how many days you are shooting on 2 cameras or 3 cameras. So that I do like a mental calculation. If they are shooting on 2 cameras, there's this much like 80 hours or 90 hours, it's going to easily touch the amount of footage or whatever. So if I'm working on a certain film, I know it's going to cross 100 hours of footage. So then I tell them ki you are talking about 2 cameras, you're talking about this one. So then they understand ki, oh yeah. Suddenly, as soon as you make them very specifics, then I think they also like take a backseat and like, oh, okay, matlab you need 2 associates or one assistant.
We
one
literally
this one.
have to break it down like how VFX breaks it down, budgeting for them. I quite envy how, VFX budgeting is so intricate and how we are, so like loose about कि हाँ इतने में भी कर लेंगे हाँ उतने में भी कर लेंगे like क्यों कर लेंगे भाई करना चाहिए ना इस सिस्टम में.
But there's no greater joy than getting that 10% of remaining payment.
वो बोनस होता है ना.
वो सडनली एक दिन आता है कि हाँ हो गया अब सब प्रोजेक्ट खत्म हो गए काफी टाइम हो गया आपका इनवॉइस नहीं भेजा अभी आपने.
और आजकल कुछ केसेस में TDS भी आता है अचानक से TDS नहीं फाइल किया होगा. Sorry, I have one quick question because I have this opportunity and I've always wondered this, taking a leaf from what Jabin was talking about, how we don't know how other editors work, right? And thanks to you, at least I got to know how Srikar sir functions. So, it was a almost lifelong mystery of how that man, translates his edits.
Man is a mystery himself. Well,
yeah,
let's say that.
That is true. I have a question because I sort of struggle with it myself, and especially when we are talking about commercial filmmaking, be it a show or be it a film, is that this is a question about once you are done with your edit, you've sort of taken this time of designing your edit a certain way, and there are a bunch of decisions that you've taken on the timeline creatively. It's a pure creativity oriented question. Now you're going to, it's almost like handing it over to someone else, and it's something that you don't have a control over, and something that you will not be even privy to. Some editors I know, but very few I know, take a very active involvement into sound design. कैसा हो गया, सुना दो मुझे, color कैसा लग रहा है, VFX कैसा दिख रहा है. But a lot of us like sort of tune off, especially if in cases people are lucky enough to get multiple projects, then they are busy. So then they don't get the chance. And I've now been on the receiving end where sometimes I've seen it on the day of release or premiere, and I've heard something and I'm like, oh shit, this is not how I had designed it, or how I had imagined, or how we had discussed. And this is not suddenly, and it's very personal. It's a personal experience, right? You spend 6 months, 8 months, whatever with it. I'm not happy with it. How do you deal with an emotion like that, or do you take active measures, or do you just leave it to the world?
And to get involved in sound and background music, more background music, because that is what really changes my edit. I feel, you go with a certain kind of reference in mind or a rhythm, and the rhythm changes when the music changes. But now I'm totally okay with it changing. Earlier, I used to get into arguments and say that no, my way is better and all. But now I feel it's also, sometimes you don't see what the director is seeing, because they have a more bigger vision, and they've stayed with it for much longer than we have. So
for me, I think it's always if the director wants me to be involved, then I get myself involved, at least in this process. Most of the time, I think the directors have been really kind to have an opinion. What do you feel and what do you think? Why don't you come for a session and just look at it if there's anything? So it has been a two-way process. It's not I wanting to sort of push into the whole room. But yeah, sometimes if somebody feels they know the job, then of course I also know they don't know the job. So let them do. My thing was constructing the offline and setting up as Namrata said, setting up the rhythm and the tone and everything. Hopefully they match up to it, or eventually they have discovered something new while composing or while doing grading or something. That's very open-ended sort of a process for me.
But if this feeling keeps coming to you, Manas, and if it keeps coming more often, now I've learned to let go. After a point, it's not your baby. But if it keeps on persisting, then it's time for you to become a director, I feel.
Now, Hemuntini, or do you have any advice for Manas?
Yeah, I think the only other way is to. Otherwise, I normally always check the sound once. So, that way I can correct stuff. Sometimes, if they need a few frames, put in an effect or whatever. And music, I put in as much as whatever. But if it bothers you, you should.
No, it doesn't bother me, but it does. I've been on the receiving end where, as Namrata was saying, it affected my cuts. And then, because at the start, I tried to interact with the BGM guy or the sound designer. I was listening to your podcast about, with Ganesh, and how he was talking about a SFX library that he would like to provide. That is a luxury. You don't get it from your sound designers. And many a times I've asked for it. I was because you will change it, I know. So, give something to me that you think suits the film. Even with the musician, I was do you have a zone? For example, I would like to share in Delhi Crime. I felt it was a great luxury from day one, before we even started editing. We had theme tracks for the show. And not just from the previous season, but we had new tracks with, our musician had given, and that influenced the way all three of us were, approaching our edits in such a big way that it was an amazing, beautiful process. I hate, using reference tracks, because I know I will use Alexander Desplat, and I think the pinnacle one is Amelie एक बार यूज कर लिया वो खत्म है म्यूजिशियन वो रिक्रिएट कर ही नहीं पाएगा बेचारा वो कभी वो इम्पैक्ट पर फिर वो बदल जाता है और फिर कट्स बदल जाते हैं और आप लिबर्टी ले लेते हो आई नो इट साउंड्स लाइक अ वेरी पर्सनल क्रिएटिव प्रॉब्लम but I think it's just that there are collective decisions that are taken in the edit room and then they are not translated later on, not taking away from the creativity of other technicians, but
I would just say to you, Manas, that do not ever leave anything कि ये sound वाला ये करेगा वो नहीं करेगा. no matter what the director promises you, they never do what you imagine they will do. So just don't leave anything for them. I also dislike putting too much temp BGM. I put it at the end, after I've done my first cut, after I've done, in fact, sometimes my fine cut. Only then do I lay BGM, even temp tracks, only before preview. I'm not interested in working with the music alongside. Personally, it disturbs me. But what I really love doing these days, and I do it more and more, is working with other sound design elements. So once somebody has given me a library, I have saved it, a VFX library. I've stolen it from that guy. I use it everywhere. Okay. And it's got thousands of sound effects. So I can find, and now you can download sound effects from the internet. It doesn't matter whether that's what eventually the sound designer will want or not want. But if it needs an alarm clock to ring, I will put in the alarm clock. If it needs like the sound of whistling wind, I will try and find something. Or if it needs the sound of rain, or somebody is putting something to fry, and that sound of the the pakoda frying, because it adds those, like the sound of the pakoda frying comes and then you cut. Okay, now once I put that sound there, then I know that because that sound has an impact on the people watching even my first cut, then the director will make sure कि वो sound वहाँ पे लगा, because he will like, नहीं यार वो edit में इतना अच्छा लग रहा था वो sound जब लगाया था तो. But अगर तुमने नहीं लगाया and you and the director just discuss it कि हाँ यहाँ पे वो sound आ जाएगा ना, the sound designer will do some bullshit. Then the sound designer will in fact not put the sound and will tell the director, देखो आपका edit कितना loose है, यहाँ पे कट जाना चाहिए था. Which is so annoying. I'm like, am I telling you how to do your job? Don't give the director, opinions on my edit. You just bloody do your sound design.
No, I think this question is also going. Recently, I had such a bad experience where 8 महीने की मेहनत के बाद sound के stage पे जाके the director told me, I never liked your choice of music on the edit.
Arey?
I was like, but throughout the process, I was constantly telling, you agree with this, right? Because I'm designing my edit to this, which I hate. I always put my BGM later, but it is a story that will require BGM. So I'm designing, you agree? तो बाद में जाके सब बदला. So I'm like, क्यों किया मेरे साथ ऐसा?
Yeah.
The other way is to just watch the edit without music. After you've cut it, put music, everything, then just switch it off. Because if the rhythm is correct, no matter what the music changes, it will work. So that is a thing. Like, doesn't matter whether your temp music is different.
Yeah.
You switch it off and work. Then
That's a great. Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point, Hemantini. And on this note, I'm just going to say I'm really, really grateful for this conversation that we've been able to have today. And thank you so much, everyone, for taking out. It's been almost 2 hours, I think, that we've spoken. Thank you so much for your time. And I hope we can at some point resume these conversations in person over a drink soon.
Okay.
Yes, Antara, you are planning a party.
What time?
Done.
Thanks, Antara. It's
Thank
been
you
great
so
fun.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys.
This is
Bye.
fun.
If you enjoyed this video, then please like it, share it, comment on it, and subscribe to this channel so you're tuned in for our upcoming episodes.